My Gavan and well met. Welcome back to my channel today. I'm going to discuss another What Would the Elves Do? I got a wonderful email from actually a few people on this subject, and I thought, well, I have this kind of experience because my husband is not at all elven-like. He definitely identifies being completely human and really doesn't resonate with the elves and has different opinions of the elves as I do. But he also understands my elven nature and he respects it and he accepts it. And he accepts it as a part of who I really am. So I wanted to talk about my experience, and I wrote down a few things that I think could help others out in this way. I will read you the email here first, anonymously. My Gavan and Kimberell, I am your elven sister in spirit, and watch your videos talking about elves, and believe very much in your mission. My trouble is, I am an elven soul who has dated a man who is nothing like the elves, doesn't care about Lord of the Rings, and doesn't particularly like the elves. Oftentimes, I daydream about being with a more elven man, and I fantasize what life would be like. What do you suggest for those who are with partners that are not elvish or do not identify with being elven-like? So my first thing I wanted to do was to identify what it means to be elven versus human. Although in Tolkien's world, elves were a kin of man, and Tolkien even wrote that they're very much related, and the elves actually were very much humanoid. They looked like man, they had the same stature as man, and they had just heightened abilities and longer life. In fact, immortal life. So being an elven soul on Earth today is a little bit different. What I do is I look at the elves and their traits, and that is how you can tell if you resonate with something. Everything has its own vibration, and so when you are a person on Earth, you may vibrate at the same frequency of the elves of Tolkien, and that's when you know that they resonate with you. And in some ways, we can look at what an elven trait is. It's being a guardian on Earth, caring for the Earth, trying to leave as less as a carbon imprint as you can, being somebody that cares for animals, has a compassionate heart towards others, and has a sort of wisdom of the old ways and the knowledge of nature, and including that into the modern life today. That's really what an elven soul means to me and how it is different from being a human. Now, of course, human and elves, they are the same, but there is a difference in identification. Elves are just humans that are more deeply connected to nature. So what do you do with a partner or a spouse that is not elvish themselves? Well, I have an answer for you today because like I said, I have experience with this myself. So here's what I would say. Number one, I think a very important thing to remember is that the elven expression is really for you. The way that I dress, the way that I look, the way that you decide to dress and look like an elf, that is for you. It is really for nobody else except for your own self to feel satisfied with how you're expressing your inner self outwardly. Now, it can be for society if you're trying to give a message to society like I am on YouTube, but it really is just for you. And for a partner or somebody that is going to be in your life and living with you, they have to accept that as part of you. So very important would be that a person in your life, they don't have to be exactly elvish themselves, but they have to respect you and accept you for your elf identity. I have a husband who really does respect that. He accepts it, and I think in some way it makes him happy because it's very different from him. He would be happy wearing a Bulls jersey, but I think he likes it when he sees me dress up like an elf. And I think that there's a point of him respecting that and understanding where it comes from, my creative nature, my artistic ability, and my way of expressing myself uniquely from him. So that is where I think it's very important. If somebody's in your life, they just need to accept you for who you are. I wrote this. Elven expression is for the self and society, but when it comes to people you live with or date or marry, they should accept you and not try to change you. And this also goes for you too. You should not try to change them as well. Humans and elves are kin, but priorities are different, and that's what makes them different. A human that is not really nature connected, then they would not be very elven-like. But a human that is very nature connected and very close to the elves and the fairies in terms of self-expression and priority in life, then they have an elven soul. And they resonate and vibrate with that frequency of the elves. But it really is for you. It's a way to experience your life and to experience yourself as an elven soul on earth. So you shouldn't want to try to change anybody to be like that, because that might not be a natural vibration or frequency within their own soul. But whoever you choose to be with, they should accept you and make you feel okay to express yourself in this way. Not somebody who is hurtful when you do express yourself in that way. I would never ever be with somebody that did not accept me as who I really am and allow me to express myself. My husband does, through jewelry, through wearing clothes, through wearing elf ears or elf jewelry. These are all ways that I can express myself as an elf. And of course, mentally and emotionally, these are also forms of expression as well, and the way that I care about the earth. He may not have those same qualities and traits, but he can appreciate them within me. This brings me to number 2. Be patient and understanding, as the elves shown in the story. The elves were never trying to make other beings on Arda be like them. They lived on their own and in their own elven realms. They weren't trying to change or to manipulate hobbits into being more elf-like or anything like that. They simply were just who they were. They were not expecting others to be like them and appreciated the difference of the races, I believe. Although there were some kind of criticism from the elves as far as what they saw and what they experienced in the past with the men taking the rings of power, and then the 9 kings of men became the wraiths later on, or the dwarf kings. The 7 of them took the rings of power and they ended up also being cursed for it. So the elves learned that these other races had these weaknesses, but they still could appreciate the difference of the races and what they all brought to Arda. So you in a relationship, you can be uniquely who you are, patient and understanding that the person you're with is not an elven soul. They're not so concerned about earth and animals as you are. They are not into magic and fairy and anything like that. So you just have to understand where they are coming from and then find ways that you can appreciate their differences. I have found many ways in which my husband is not the same as me, but I appreciate his difference. He brings a practical business side to our relationship. He's always there as an anchor to help ground me, to help build my business, to give me great advice that's going to help be practical in my life. And then I can bring creativity and self-expression and romance and imagination and all the things that I can bring as an elven soul and a little bit of fairy magic into his life. So I can appreciate the differences that we have and what he can bring. So I think that's important in a partnership. If you're not with an elven soul, try to train yourself to see the differences that that other person brings and is different from your elven soul. And understand that that's uniquely you and that's uniquely them, and to appreciate the variety in your life. Also, what I suggest is looking at the elven soul as like a spectrum. So you have the ability to be an elf at the very, last point, and some people are all the way over here. They're dressing up, they're expressing themselves, they're vegan or vegetarian. Not all elves are vegetarians or vegans, as I did explain in a video, but they're doing things that are very earth conscientious in this time, and they are connected to the fairies today, and they are, everything that you would think of somebody who is an earth child. That's the self-expression of an elf. That's one spectrum. And then you have the other opposite side of a human that is not expressing themselves as an elf at all. They don't care about earth. They don't care about magic. They're not interested in imagination or fairy tale or creativity or even the elemental spirits or souls. And they're all the way on the other side of the spectrum. Humans usually have somewhere a little bit of traits of elves and humans all mixed together. And so it depends where you are on the spectrum, and it depends where a person that you're with is on the spectrum, but try to see maybe the elvish traits that your partner has, that they might not necessarily identify themselves as an elf, but you being an elf can be aware that that's an elvish trait. If your partner recycles all the time and reuses and is very earth aware and is like a guardian towards animals and to the earth, well, then they have some elvish traits. They just might not identify with being elven, and they might not identify with being an elf themselves in their life, but they do have elvish traits. And maybe you can point that out to them, or you could simply keep it as your own little secret, as I do. Sometimes I tell my husband and he just kind of like, okay, but he doesn't really accept it as part of him. But if you can accept it as part of them, that's really what matters. And if that makes it easier for you to be in a relationship with them, well, then great. All it takes is for you to be aware of where they are on the spectrum of elvish traits and elvish qualities. Now, also talking about the elvish traits and qualities, let's look at the opposite. There are people that do not even represent elvish traits and qualities, but there is some beauty in that. There's qualities that others have that is not like the elves that maybe you can find very nice and you could find acceptable in your life. You don't always have to be in fairyland all the time to live your life as an elf, but you can appreciate and accept the other sides of life on Earth. So it's important for people to accept you, for you to accept them, and then also to appreciate the non-elvish traits and the elvish traits within people. Number 3, going back to Stoicism, which I've done a couple of videos on about, the idea of Stoicism is that when you surround yourself with people who can elevate you or empower you, that's better for you because they will bring you up and keep you at a state of higher awareness instead of slipping down into unconscious actions. So a person that you're with, that you're living with, you're married to, you're dating, they do need to have a sort of elevation to their consciousness, I believe. If you are truly an elven soul and you're aware and you're alert and you are resonating with the elves of Tolkien, then your companion should have some state of higher awareness within them. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are elvish in nature, but they still can very much bring you up. And I will use the example of my husband once again. He's very business-minded, very practical, and he helps me organize my thoughts and get myself together as a businesswoman and try to create my dreams and goals together. And this is something that I appreciate within him because sometimes I'm really focused on more the creative and more the beautiful aspect of things, and he brings a little bit more practicality into my life, which I like because I have a little bit of it, and it helps to balance me and center me and bring that more practical nature outside of myself as well. So I think that my husband actually elevates me in that way. He's not necessarily the same as me. He's not having the elven nature as me, but he elevates me. I am a better person when I am with him. And that's really the partnership that you should be in. Are you a better person when you're with that person? Or are you truly just somebody that's not really yourself, can't be really true to who you are, and they bring you down and they don't bring out the best versions of yourself? I believe my husband brings the best versions of myself out forward to surface. And so that's what I would recommend is take a look at that. Even though they're not necessarily elven in nature, do they still elevate you in some way and empower you? Number 4, teaching by example. So this is something you might not want to show your spouse or your partner. But if you are an elven soul and you came to this video, you may know something and you may not, but you are on Earth at this time when humans have lost their way to nature, to feeling connected to nature, and you're a balancer in that. You're trying to bring forth a nature connection with all that you do, the way that you express yourself, maybe the hobbies that you have, the way that you spend your time in your life as an elven soul. So understand that some people that you meet in your life will have no nature connection, will have no elvish soul or trait to them. And you are in their life for that reason, to bring that out, to inspire them, to bring something forward that they don't have or that is unconscious within themselves. So that's one aspect to look at it, is that you can be a teacher and lead by example. Now, don't get discouraged and don't expect for the person that you're with to become all of a sudden very elven-like. If you're living by example with your elven self, you may start to bring those traits and qualities out in other people that you are around. So don't tell anybody. But it's not a way of manipulation, it's just a way of inspiration. And don't expect people to change through this process, but just see that it could be a byproduct. And that's maybe why you are with this particular person. You fell in love for a reason. You started dating, you started being interested in a person for a reason. A lot of these reasons are very cosmically connected in the idea that you are with this particular soul to learn from them as they are to learn from you, to progress spiritually together on a journey, on a road of life together. And so see it that way, that there's a teacher-student cycle within a relationship, that there are some things that you are there to teach your spouse that is not very elvish yet, or is not having very many elven traits. And if you can inspire that to come out more in them, then that's a really great reason of maybe why you're with that person who doesn't seem very elven-like right now. But also, they are teaching you something. And this has taken me a while to sit back in my pride and to be more of a humble person and to admit to myself, what did my non-elf husband teach me? What has he shown me? How has he kept me grounded and supported me on this journey? So I hope that that helps you. I would say the three things are very important in a relationship: patience, understanding, which is compassion to me, and wisdom. These three things will always allow you to be very present and be very aware when you are in a relationship. You have patience for people because you know that maybe some people are just not there yet where you are, connected to nature and conscious of earth and conscious of your elven soul. And you're understanding and compassionate to understand where people are coming from and how far they have to go or where they are heading towards and what they can teach you, your understanding of what you are supposed to learn in the relationship too. And three, wisdom, taking your experiences and learning from them and growing together so that you can help each other spiritually develop. There is one thing that is an absolute must in a relationship. If you are an elven soul, if you have a fairy nature to you, that is respect. Whoever is in your life, they must respect you. They cannot physically or emotionally abuse you because of who you are. If you are in a relationship with somebody who does that, then that is not the right relationship for you, I believe. Although I do believe that there are abilities for people to change and grow. If you are in something that causes you a lot of pain and emotional pain because somebody just doesn't accept you and they're very abusive towards you because something about you is just projected because for some reason, whatever way it is, the way that you choose to express yourself irritates them. And it's maybe a mirror to them of who they are not and how disconnected from nature they are. If someone is abusive towards you, you should not be in that relationship. You should definitely get out, because it is the truth that there are other people and companions out there in the world who will appreciate that elven soul within you, and I have found it. So I would say that that is one of the most important things. But everything else is really just something that you just have to look deep within your heart and your soul and have patience, understanding, and wisdom when you are in a relationship, and really look out for yourself, but also be very aware. What is it about this person that drew you to them in the first place? What is it that you were supposed to learn? What can you show them, and what can they show you? I believe that relationships are very much brought to our attention or our experience for this reason. It's not just for experience of fun and love, but it is for you to spiritually develop with a companion. And one of the greatest ways that makes us spiritually develop and learn is through the process of learning what love is not, how to unconditionally love others, how to conditionally love others, and setting boundaries and goals with a person. I think these are the greatest lessons in life, is learning about how to love better others as well as yourself. And that's what a relationship should show you. So I hope that this answered your question. And I believe this is what the elves would do, is that they would not expect any of the humans to be like them when they mated and intermingled with them from the Numenorian days. And they had Numenor, which was a place where elves and man really had interbreeding, and man had a bloodline of elves in Tolkien's story. But of course, Numenor had to fall because eventually man got jealous of the elves and wanted the immortality that the elves had. But you can read that all later on your own in Children of Hurin and also in the Numenor tales. But I hope this answered your question, and I will see you all on the next video.